Okay, great. I just put into the chat the website, What Matters, and this is from the author that Bobby just shared. And it talks about getting started with OKRs, and then the link to, he talks about his book in there, but it's a really powerful way to get things moving, measure goals, really get yourself moving towards reaching the goals that you have set for yourself. So with this, give us one strategy. The 15-minute meeting is what I really want to talk about here that you use with your staff.
Okay, so you want me to talk about what goes on during the meetings?
Yeah, so let me give a little bit of background. So what Bobby does with his, how many staff members do you have, Bobby? And this is not just teachers, this is all staff.
Yeah, over 200. We talk about paraprofessionals, food nutrition, our maintenance and custodial staff.
Okay, so Bobby, at the beginning of the year, has what he calls 15-minute meetings, or I don't know what you call them, temperature checks, maybe?
No, those are 15-minute meetings. Temperature checks or something else.
Okay, sorry. He has 15-minute meetings that he schedules, and we'll go through how he schedules these with each one of his staff. So I wanted him to share what he does during these 15-minute meetings, how he sets them up. So if you wouldn't mind just starting there, Bobby.
Okay, so yeah, each quarter I do 15-minute meetings with all my staff. So I use a tool called Calendly. If you're not aware of it, there's a lot of YouTube videos out there on how to use Calendly. It connects very well with Google Calendar. We're a Google district. And so I use Calendly and I share the link with the staff. And then I really just sit down and look at my calendar in advance, really project it out about a month. And it's a guessing game sometimes. Sometimes I have to reschedule, and sometimes my administrative assistant, who's amazing, she makes it happen for me and reschedules. But oftentimes I'm able to stick with the appointments. And so the 15-minute meetings, I come in with different questions each month. So the first month I may ask, what are some things that we do great at Mason? What are two things that we can improve on? How was your summer? Tell me what you and your family did. Has somebody helped you recently that I can give a shout out to? And then the next quarter, I may go into, I think I said month, I meant quarter. So I do 15-minute meetings each quarter. So this quarter we looked at, hey, how can we improve culture? Are there a couple ways that you think the administrative team can build belonging even better? Again, who can I give a shout out to that's really helped you lately? Again, what are you doing during Thanksgiving, or excuse me, during your fall break? And I get to learn more about the staff and learn more about their families. And so I take notes. I use an 8.5 by 14 pad and I just jot down notes. Now the Calendly, you can put the questions in. So the staff will answer these questions before I meet with them. And then I can glance at what they put down, and then I'll go over the answers with them. What that does is allow our meetings to be 15 minutes and not take longer than that. So Calendly is a very powerful tool, as long as you put the questions in advance. and so yeah, those meetings, I give myself a little gap too. In Calendly, you can gap your meetings between 5 and 10 minutes if you don't want meetings like right on top of each other. So I do that. So I spend a lot of time in Calendly. Like next week on Monday, we don't have students, but I'll be at work, and I'll jump back in the Calendly and I'll schedule my month of December, and then I'll share it with the staff and say, hey, here's the link. If you haven't been able to meet with me this quarter, go ahead and jump in. And so I think one thing Charity shared in the beginning, while I'm a principal doing this, to be honest with you, as a counselor, as a teacher, some of my best teachers do this on Fridays with their students, and they may not use Calendly, but they do temperature checks with their students to get to know them a little bit better, to find out more about their lives, and it creates a sense of belonging in their classroom as well. So I think if you're listening to this today, there's multiple ways to do this. Even counselors can use this as well as periodical meetings with their students.
Yeah, as a counselor, I actually do this with my students. I was a high school counselor, so I actually used a Google form and not a Calendly, and I'll show you what Calendly looks like if you've never used it. I used a Google form and just had questions in there and sent it out to them ahead of time. And then the questions they had already answered, so I could look at it before they came in, and then we can really have a conversation instead of me trying to pull questions out of, you know, a high school student. So, which is not easy sometimes, but let me show you real quick. And Bobby, while I'm getting ready to share my screen, someone said, how do you get all your staff to sign up voluntarily? Is this a voluntarily thing?
No, so it's kind of a little bit of a joke. So I send it out each, we have a weekly newsletter that goes out on Sundays at 4 o'clock. And I always type it in and say, it's that time to meet with Bobby this quarter. Here's the link. Don't make Lori, my administrative assistant's Lori Brown. I said, don't make Lori Brown and I come hunting you down. And so I have a list, and then I highlight who I've met with. And each quarter, it's usually the same people that I have to give a little nudge to. And so either I'll go up and see them personally, or Lori will give them a call, and then we end up getting a meeting in. But I thought the same thing at first. I thought, well, I won't get people to sign up, but to be honest with you, the staff really enjoys the meetings as much as I do, and so I never have a problem with having people sign up. I usually get about 90 to 92%, and then I go get the other 10 to 8%. And I'll now, like this quarter, we'll end it here in the middle of December, and I extend the meetings into December, so it's not like you have to meet with me the first week or 2 weeks of the quarter. I stretch them out over time because, again, like I said, it's something to get to know people more, to get their feedback on the building and what's going on. It doesn't have to happen exactly when each quarter starts.
So I'll tell you, in the beginning, when Bobby first came to Mason, every year they do school team shirts. And so that was the only way they could get their shirt in the beginning. And so that was, everybody wanted their t-shirt. So absolutely they came to, to the meetings, not only to get their shirt, but I think it's kind of an expectation now. So let me share with you Calendly. Can you see my Calendly screen, Bobby? Yep, thank you. Okay, so this is what Calendly looks like. If you've never had it, it's free, calendly.com. So not calendar, Calendly. And you log in, and let's see, what it does, it connects to your calendar. So when someone sets a meeting, it automatically shows up in your calendar. I'm getting mixed up. Calendar. And that way it's already set. There's no going back and forth and looking at the Calendly and setting up on your calendar. So let me there's a Chrome extension for it. Let me log in here. I was actually logged in. You can log in with your Google or Microsoft. Of course, there's an error.
I always suggest people just go to YouTube and type in how to use Calendly.
Yeah.
There's some good videos out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Just let me show you real quick just how easy it is. You hit create an event type, do a one-on-one, you give it a name, a location, a description. And when Bobby was saying he puts questions in there ahead of time so people can answer them and be prepared. They give you a space to do that in here. So you can set your custom hours, and this is what you'll go in and set your hours of when people can sign up. And then this is where it says invitee questions. This is where you can ask questions. So then they can, be prepared. So I think everybody likes to be prepared. One thing Bobby did mention that I wanted to go back on. Yes, this links to your calendar. So the benefit of using Calendly is that you can add those questions in there. people can just click on a link and see what times are open. So it's kind of like scheduling like a hair appointment, seeing what times are open. They click on it and it goes directly to your calendar. So that's it. It goes to your calendar and their calendar.
Charity,
Yes.
can I ask a question? How does it go? Okay, how does the Calendly go to your Google Calendar? Because like I know the Google, we
Yeah.
have like the staff calendar on it, and then we have our personal calendar on it, you know, our different colors. So what someone else asked, what's the benefit? Is it one more step, or is it intertwined, or you know what I mean? I don't
It's
understand.
intertwined. So
Okay.
when you set up your Calendly account, it asks you what calendar you want to connect it to.
Oh, okay, that's what
Yeah.
I wasn't getting. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And it links directly to your calendar. And so yes, it's intertwined.
Okay. That's
Um,
what, okay.
It
yeah, yeah,
also
yeah.
reads, it'll read when you already have an appointment. So then it doesn't let somebody schedule during that time.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't let so if you already have meetings scheduled in there, it doesn't let anybody schedule over other meetings. So like I said, it's like scheduling a hair appointment online or something. So when you schedule that, it goes to your calendar and it goes to whoever you're scheduling with. And then you can add Google Meet, you can add a Zoom link, all kinds of different things. So if you want to meet virtually, it does that as well.
Okay, so what if, so I'm special education and we can have multiple meetings at the same time, but you're saying the person's name is what makes it, do you know what I mean? Like the time there can be two at the same time, but the people can be different. Is that what it is? Because like I can have my IEP team and another teacher can have her IEP team, say
Yeah,
five different, 10 people, five on each. So it
yeah,
won't, mine won't overlap with that other one because it's the same time, correct?
right.
The
If
people. Okay.
right. Yeah.
Got it
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Like Bobby said, go to YouTube or even on the Calendly's homepage. They will have like a how-to video of getting started. It's super easy, like I said, and it's free. You'll start to find the benefits. Do all staff members meet each quarter?
Yes.
Yes, it does take a lot of Bobby's time, absolutely. And another question that he asked them is who is someone that's helped you recently? And if it's someone within the building, then he sends them an email saying, thank you for helping this person. And I think that's what takes up the time. But I think, and Bobby, you can correct me, this is something that he iterates all the time on this 15-minute meeting. And this is something that does take a bit of his time, but also it makes people feel that sense of belonging, like I'm helping people. Do you want to add anything to that, Bobby?
Well, it does a few things. So as I said, I take notes during the meetings and then I put a star next to things that need to have attention brought to it. So at the end of the day, when I'm reflecting on the day, I'll go back through the notebook and anything with a star. If it's something one of my assistant principals can address, and I'll email them and say, hey, can you get a key for Danny for one of the areas that he needs access to? He doesn't have a key for that. Assistant principal says, sure. Next thing you know, there's a key sitting on Danny's desk the next day. Well, Danny's like, wow. So he's actually asking me the question, sitting down with me. And then when I tell him something, he's actually finding solutions for it. So then when you say, hey, can you tell me somebody's to give a shout out to that's helped you recently? And then you do that. And then the next day you send him an email. And then I say, hey, Shannon gave you a shout out for helping her with an IEP recently. She really, really appreciated it. And to be honest with you, she said, and then I quote what the teacher said. Well, then that teacher walks up to that other teacher the next day and says, hey, Bobby told me what you said about me. I appreciate that. Those type of things, they're game changers. Just straight up game changers if you're talking about belonging, because It looks like you're responsive. Obviously, it looks like I care. And not only does it just represent me, it represents my entire team. So I get my entire team involved in it. Now they're not having the 15-minute meetings, but that response time, the caring, the staff looks and says like, hey, when I need something, these guys don't just say they're servant leadership, they actually do it.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. So that kind of goes into, and you already touched on it a little bit, but how have you, well, actually, you touched on a little bit about your staff, but how have you yourself benefited from these individual meetings with your staff?
Well, I mean, it's probably been the best thing I've ever done in my career, to be honest with you. Little things like I started getting their birthdays, and then I'd put them on the Google Calendar, share with the whole staff. And then when somebody's birthday, I guess stop down and see them in the morning, ask them what they're doing that night. And I usually stop in when the kids are in there, and teachers and actually the whole staff, they're so humble. They don't even tell the kids like, "Hey, it's my birthday," So things like that. I mean, it's just it's been the best thing I ever did in my career. I mean, I've always said that. So getting to know staff, and then I get to know a little bit more about them. It's like some of y'all talk with some of them, and they'll talk about how they like doing things outdoors. And so like you helped me set up the kayak trip this year in the summer. Well, I didn't set that up just because I love to kayak, which I do, but a lot of staff members, I'd ask them in the spring, like, hey, what do you think about that? They're like, oh, I like to get outdoors. I like to kayak. Well, then we did it to start the year off as a staff event. It was a big hit. So I can go on and on about the benefits of it. I think people look at it and say, I could never do that. Well, okay. That's, if it's something's important to you, you'll make it happen. If not, you'll make an excuse. And so a lot of my days consist of those meetings and walkthroughs and being at lunch. That's really my day. But if you look at it in a whole, if I'm getting in classrooms, that's a great thing. If I'm meeting with staff members and having personal conversations about them and helping them and being the servant leader that I say I am, that's a great thing. If I'm at lunches with kids and connecting with them, that's a great thing. So that equals a great day.
So yes, great. That's a great point. I know you could go on, and he does come home and say, so and so this, and for example, he has 200 staff members, right? And so there's no possible way without something like this, I think, Bobby, that you could get to know them, right?
No, I mean, because I wasn't doing it, if I took a year off of doing this, I'd get myself jammed up in an office, or I wouldn't be able to connect with the whole staff. So I need to do something like that. With the walkthroughs combined with that, you got to get your face out there in a building that big. You got to have the students see you. And so what we've created a culture of is, when anybody walks in a room, none of our students even do anything because they're so accustomed to having other adults in the room, check on teachers, check on them. That's the kind of culture that we want at Mason and the entire district. And so I would not be able to do these type of things without having these meetings.
That's actually, so I was going to ask you, I saw something, and please ask questions. I love how you're asking questions in the chat. I saw something on Twitter today. This teacher was just so angry that their admin came into their classroom. And I'm wondering, do you think something like this makes a difference, that you've created do you think it helps with you going into the classroom, I think?
Definitely. So now again, with our OKRs, we have top 10 expectations for our staff, top 10 expectations for our administrator team, and we share the one with our staff in May about top 10 expectations for our administrative team. And I told them, we're all going to get 10 walkthroughs in a week. So if I have 5 other administrators, we're going to get at least 60 walkthroughs in. So I told them, like, we're going to be in the classroom, but we've been doing that for years. But the meetings, so they already know that. So, and I've never gotten any feedback from staff that says, because one of the questions I ask, hey, what's something that's going well right now? What's helping building a sense of belonging for you? And a lot of times it's love seeing people in my room. I love the walkthroughs. Well, if I'm getting that type of feedback, I've never had somebody in my building say, there's too many walkthroughs, there's too many people in my room. We just don't have that culture at Mason. So on top of meeting with them the 15 minutes, I get to know them more personally. I ask them, how are classes going? What's going on? Sometimes they're great. Sometimes they're, like, hey, I could use some help here. Okay, let's make it happen. So I think it's when they see us come in, to be honest with you, I think it makes them feel good, and we always give them feedback. And I'll just have to say, I mean, I'm not bragging, but 99% of the time it's positive feedback because there's a lot of great things going on. But I'm sure that's the case across the country, if more people would get in classrooms.
Absolutely. One thing that I will share is, it's been really good for, I don't know, I guess it's kind of cool that, he came home and, one day said, so-and-so is an artist and she's doing a show here in downtown Cincinnati. We should go. And like, he didn't know that before. And we go down to her show and she's just so happy to see us there. She's wonderful art. We bought a piece of art from her. And, just knowing what his staff is doing outside of the building, I think is very helpful. And it does create that sense of belonging that, my admin do care, because we would all agree there's been some tension between admin and staff with the pandemic, right? So, I think, again, this could work with any position that you're in. And it doesn't have to be just because he's in a big school. It could be a small school as well, right? There are things we don't know, even if we're in a small building. Bobby was in a small building before. But let's go back to, someone said, what does your retention look like? So how many new teachers did you have to hire this year?
Well, I take a lot of pride in that. We don't hire many new teachers. I think I'll have to talk a little bit about my district, though. We have a lot of great students, a very high performing district. Our teachers, our staff are taken care of very well economically, along with myself. So I'm not going to say it's all me, but I take a lot of pride in the fact that we do not hire a lot of new staff each year. Now, this year we had, we had some that, one chose to stay home with her family, other chose to go do something else. I just recently had a staff member resign to go work in the private sector. I do exit interviews with them. They didn't leave because of lack of belonging from the administrative team or the culture in the building. And I always look and see why are they choosing to do something else or go somewhere else. And if it gets to a point where they're leaving because of me or because of my team, then it's time for me to go do something else. And so we're not there right now. So, but I did have to hire a few. When I say a few, I pulled 4 or 5, I believe. But
For a building that as big as yours, that's
yeah. But I think it speaks more to our district and where we
Yeah.
live and things. I'm not gonna take any credit for that.
okay. So Amanda asked, how has this strategy reached other schools in your area? Do you share this with other principals? And has there been additional buy-in from other school leaders?
We definitely share it with other leaders. This I could tell you, we do something called community classrooms. My associate principal, Dr. Robin Jordan, does a great job with this. We get principals, or excuse me, teachers come in from local districts that we're close to, and then they come and watch our teachers teach, and then we go and visit their buildings as well. And so when a lot of times I can't join them on their visiting classrooms because I'm having the meetings, and Dr. Jordan makes it a point to say, Bobby meets with all the staff members for 15 minutes, and today he either will be able to join us or he won't. So we definitely make other people aware of it. I try to use social media as much as I can, especially Twitter, to say, Sometimes like you see some of my tweets, I say, here's the benefits of 15-minute meetings. And then sometimes I get so jacked up, I have to share something I learned. Like Charity was talking about, I learned more about my staff and the side hustles they have. And I'll share the side hustles out there. And then somebody will say, and I may add at the end of the tweet, I learned this during 15-minute meetings today. DM me if you want more information. I don't try to hide anything. I'm not bragging about anything. I'll share with anybody. Anybody wants to know about it. I'll share everything with them. I'll share the questions I use. I want everybody to be great. I want, all the schools to be as great as ours. And so, yeah, I hope people catch on to it, but I think sometimes people look at it and say, I can't do that. Well, you've already heard what I think of that. I just think there's time there. You just gotta, you just gotta plan your calendar. Charity knows this. I sit down on Sundays. Sometimes I get up early before everybody even gets up, and I'll just go through my calendar for the week, and I'll punch in walkthroughs in there. I do little things like after I do the pledge, I get out of my office and get in classrooms that first period. Because you look at the data, you stay in your office that first period, you're going to get jammed in there. Somebody's going to come hot off the presses wanting to talk to you. You're not going to get out of your classroom. So I do these little things, and I do them purposefully. I think they can add up. It's like James Clear's book. We talk about habits of mind, and he talks about you want to be a runner, and you better put your shoes by the bed with some clothes to run in. So when you get out of bed, your feet hit those shoes, and you got to go run. You want to eat more fruit, don't go put it in the bottom shelf and close the door. You want to eat more fruit, you put it right on the island so you see it every day. Those are habits of mine. And so I believe in those, and I think they've helped me, especially these 15-minute meetings. I think they've helped me.
Bobby, are you hiring right now? No, I'm just teasing. I love my principal. I would never leave. I was just teasing.
I'm always hiring intervention specialists. So come on down. I get jacked up about this stuff. I got a little passion for it. So, I've had some bad data, and so when you look at yourself, you got bad data. You're like, this ain't me. And so we made some changes, and I definitely don't want my team to look bad. You know what I mean? And so when I see that data, I think most people are talking about me, but I definitely don't want my team to look bad. So I take it personally. Yes. I guess Charity got knocked out, so she's going to sign back on. So one of the questions she wanted me to talk about was what changes have I made or will I make for future check-ins? So each quarter I change the questions, and as I said, I try to focus them on belonging. I'm always asking about people who've helped them. I think next quarter, I look and that'll be in January. I'll ask them how the holidays were, how the breaks were. I'll ask them how their families are. I'll probably ask them how are their goals that they set for this year, how their OKRs, how are they progressing? But I always ask how we can get better. I always ask that. And you'd be surprised, a lot of the staff members, even though it's not anonymous, they'll share with me their thoughts, and it's great because especially when they do that, I try to take that and then I take it to our admin team, and I want to do something about it, because you never want to send a survey or question out and then never share the results, or they ask somebody a question and then they give you an answer and you don't do anything about it. You don't do that. You want to talk about a lack of belonging and a lack of trust. You do those two things, you've lost your staff. So that's something that I don't think it's about change, but it's something that I'm going to do the future check-in. As one thing she's asked, like, how do I know it's making a difference? Well, we use something called panorama survey, which I mentioned in the beginning. And so we administer that in the fall and in the spring. And so last spring we used the data to create our OKRs, and then we administered it in October, and our data skyrocketed. Now it's funny because I tell the staff, that goes to show you how poor of a job I was doing. And I think sometimes, they laugh, and I'm like, well, I have no shame in saying that, because I told you in the beginning I wasn't doing a very good job with that. I lost sight of some things. Being a leader, even a teacher, educational leader, I don't care what you do, but I told my staff on Friday, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And it's not easy, that. So I think sometimes as teachers, parapros, custodian, maintenance, and media specialists, counselors, administrators, I think sometimes these positions can take the empathy and compassion from us. And then once it does that, you're in a bad spot, because then everyone else is going to see that. We always talk about students are the first people to be able to see, if you had a bad night, if things aren't going well in your personal life. I think your staff's the same way when it comes to administrator. Right? They know when things are going well for me and when they're not, especially my closest staff. It's always, I'll get a text or come up, hey, you doing all right? It's like clockwork. And so I can't hide it. And so when I don't have a smile on my face, that's when I get that question. I know I gotta, I usually go home and reflect a little bit and get to bed early and wake up early. And it's a new day. So, but that's how I know it's making a difference. By looking at the data.
Yeah. Well, you're looking at the whole, like we have to look at the whole child. Sometimes, I went to the office the other day and I said, academics are at the bottom of the list for this child because she was in crisis. And so we have to look at the whole child. And it sounds like you're looking, at the whole teacher, for being potential leaders. And I think that's what makes that connection between admin and, the staff. And of course, then the teachers, because I know, my students here in Las Vegas, we have a lot of classes on equity, diversity, and I think if you make that connection on any level with a student, that what they want to work harder for you, and they do, and I think that's the same with you and your teachers, is what it sounds like.
I just brought that up on my staff meeting. Is today Saturday? Yeah, I brought it up yesterday. It's about making moments. I'm a big believer in the book called The Power of Moments by the Heath brothers. And actually this summer, another piece of the belonging that I did is I took that book. It's the third time I read it, and I broke down each chapter of the book, and I filled poster chart papers up, and they're hanging all around my office. So I have a visual all day when I'm in there of the things I need to be doing to increase that belonging, not just with staff, with students. But you're exactly right. I told the staff Friday, I told this story of a teacher that we have an increasing population of Micronesian students in Mason. And this student came into this teacher's room as a freshman, had her head down, hood on, didn't really talk to anybody. We have something that we use during the day on Wednesdays called Connect Time. In layman's terms, it's really recess for high school kids for an hour. Kids get to go and choose sessions, whether it's kickball, coloring, or maybe go and get help in algebra 2. So this teacher also had this student in his Connect session because he works closely with Micronesian students. Well, this student, he just kept plugging away, just kept connecting with her. And he found some connections for her, some more Micronesian students and some other students, so she got close with. And she's a junior now, and she wrote him a thank you note the other day. And it's one of those things. It's like it's that moment. Like he created those moments. Moments just don't happen. Like staff members, the great ones, create the moments. And I think sometimes we, as teachers, as educators, I know I was guilty of it. Is I'd say, kids would ask questions, I'd say, well, look it up. Or kids would say, ask a question, I'd say, well, just search it on Google, and I'd walk away instead of and it's usually the middle students or the lower students, your top-notch students. They usually don't need too many moments. It's those kids that need it the most and need those connections. And that teacher, he's great at finding those students that need those connections and then creating those moments. Because I tell teachers, I get it from Jimmy Cassis, is talk about the interview chair. I guarantee you, when you sat in the interview chair for your job, you didn't say, well, I can't make moments because the copier's broke, or I can't make moments because the bathroom's dirty, or I can't make moments in the classroom because the microwave's dirty. Like, those are some of the things I hear. I guarantee you, when you sat in the interview chair, you told you were going to make moments, or you were going to be there for all kids. I know all educators did it. Like Jimmy said, ain't nobody ever wants to wake up and be average. You don't walk in the mirror in the morning and say, all right, I'm going to go in today and be average. Like, you want to be great. And so that's what I get back to with my staff all the time. Our theme this year is culture starts with me. I always tell them it starts with each one of us. Bobby Dodd and my team can only do so much. I'm not servant leadership. I'll give you everything you need to be successful. But in the end, there's 180 of them, 200 plus total staff. Culture starts with them, and they got to model it. And then our kids are going to feed into that. So I completely agree with you. It's about those moments, and it's about us modeling for our kids, so they can see success, and then they'll be successful. I went on a tangent there, but I get passionate sometimes about that stuff.
Well, you're talking about technology, and one thing that came out of the pandemic is, I know in our district we use Google Meet a lot. And for our IEP meetings, we've had more parents attend because I do it on Google Meet. Then they don't have to get in the car, they don't have to drive, and I communicate with them all the time. But even just that little bit of technology, I mean, in person, of course, is always better, but I have some parents working 2 jobs, single parent. It's very hard. So I always offer Google Meet first. And they are so happy, and we actually get more done. So that's a technology that came out of the pandemic, which is I think a positive, just because instead of the no shows, I have 100% showing because we can use that. So
I completely agree with you. It reminds me of, as Charity was talking about earlier, something called temperature checks. When we were online, we said, listen, we got to connect with our staff and figure out if they're doing okay. So we started sending out these short surveys called temperature checks, and we still do it to this day. At the end of every staff meeting, we put on there, how are you doing? And there's choices of great, good, okay, don't need support. And if somebody checks on there, they need support, we immediately go meet with them and say, what can we do? Did the same thing but we started it during COVID. We would get on the phone and say, hey, Susan, are you doing okay? What do you need from us? And, and there's good conversation there. And sometimes it's just they needed someone to talk to. We have taken that from COVID, and we still use it every month that we have a meeting. So I completely agree with you. Technology, we can't just forget about COVID. I'm the first one to say a lot of things were bad. I know that. But there are some things we need to take and just keep using because they actually worked.
Yeah, I just thanks, Bobby and Holly. I just put into the chat, like, actually just thinking about you talking about the families, Holly. I like this idea possibly for connecting with families, right? If they, we have parent teacher conferences, but sometimes they can't make it, or they're working or whatever. But what a great way to be inclusive about inviting parents to conversations. And Bobby talk, one thing that stands out to me is one of his really good teachers was struggling. And I think without this 15-minute meeting that Bobby has with him, or with all staff, he probably wouldn't have told Bobby, because he didn't want to feel like he was being a burden. But he came out and said, you know what, I have most of the kids in one of my classes are ELL, and I am struggling and I don't know what to do. So would you agree, Bobby? You wouldn't have heard about that outside of that meeting.
Yeah, it's interesting. We the same conversation. This really occurred. It's how it is. Is a teacher or an administrator? You walk past somebody, and we always start with, "Hey, how you doing?" or "How's it going?" And the immediate response you get back is, "I'm doing okay." And then you may do a little small talk, and you walk past each other. Well, my thing to my staff was, listen, let's not do that. Like, because that person that does that is walking by me and then they're going back to their classroom. And this is a great example. That person was struggling. Now, thank God I had these meetings and I met with him a couple of days later. But I told him, like, why do people say that? And he's like, well, one of the reasons I think is they may think they say that to you about what they're struggling with, you're going to put more work on them. And I'm like, wow, that doesn't kick you right in the gut. I don't know what does. I'm like, well, no, I don't want people thinking that. I'm asking because I really care. So something like that, when you hear that, and this guy's a great teacher, I was like, well, that's not good. So I took that back to my admin team. I was like, hey, we gotta do something about this. We gotta rethink how we're approaching this. So that's a good example though, of like, those meetings are important because there's too much of that passing in the hallway, especially the big organization like we have of, hey, how you doing? Oh, great. And then you go back and 2 days later you find out, oh no, actually his dad's in the hospital with cancer. Like, well, you got to sit down with people and take some time and have those conversations to find those things instead of passing in the hallway because he's going somewhere and I'm going somewhere. So yeah, I agree with you.
I don't know if you answered this when I got knocked out of Zoom, but someone said beyond the meetings, what are some other things that you do for belonging? And this could be a whole nother session.
Yeah,
This could be a whole nother session. And actually, if you ever get into Link Spring that we do at Link, Bobby has actually written some content around a couple of different ways. This is one of the content areas. And another one is he mentioned his staff meetings. And that's a whole different thing. So if you want to, I don't know if you want to talk about anything else, Bobby, but that's just one thing that came to mind for me.
Yeah, I'll talk about a couple of things. So one thing is we do staff events purposefully. So each one of my admin team, we schedule a staff event. And we rotate it each month. So this month we did just on Friday, we did turkey bowling. And so one of my assistant principals is in charge of setting that all up. And we do that and the kid during lunches and the kids get a watch and the teachers come down and we have a contest. December, we'll have a staff holiday party at a local brewery. Then we do additional things. So if I'm sitting there and I'm like, something, the United States plays in the World Cup against Wales on Monday. Why don't we leave a little bit early from school? Teachers won't be there. We're on fall break. And if I tell my admin team, hey, let's have a meeting, admin meeting, let's take off. Then I tell the whole staff, hey, we're going to be at a local brewery. Come on over if you want to come watch the game with us. Bobby will buy the first round. So we do those things spontaneously, and we get some decent turnout. But we try to do things too all over the city during different times. So we try to do things after school because sometimes people can stay. We have a staff that has I think a lot of my staff has young kids, so they can't stay after school sometimes. Then we try to do things on the weekend. So we try to mix it up. Another thing that we do is our staff meetings. She was talking about my staff meetings. I have a template set up for them. So every time the staff comes in on Fridays, they know exactly what's happened. We give them food and drinks when they walk in. We're playing music. We talk about the theme of Culture Starts With Me. We do a couple questions like, hey, what student made you smile this week? You got to get up in our auditorium and walk around and talk with other people. Because that's some feedback that we got is we have such a big building and it's spaced out that they don't get to see their peers all the time. So we purposely spend about 5 to 7 to 8 minutes of the meeting doing that because that's a feedback that we've got. Then I jump into our OKRs. Every month, I always want to tell them, this is our purpose. There's a big difference between passion and purpose. We're all going to have different levels of passion. I get that. I understand that. Our purpose is always the same. And then we go over the OKRs and we talk about, belonging, student engagement, professional learning for our staff. Then we do something where every month it's called To Have a Good Day, You Have to Do Good Things. I got it from Ryan Holiday's one of his books. I love that quote. We raise funds for a local organization every month and we send them a check from the Mason staff. I let the staff vote on using a Google form what organization we are going to donate funds to that month. I pass a jar around. drop a 20 in there myself and I say, let's get this going. And then I put my Venmo on the screen. Last month, we raised $1,400 for one of our staff members organization that she has because she lost her son when he was like 4. So, think about that. You're in a staff meeting, you get to present a check to one of your staff members who's got a great organization. Then we jump in from that, we jump into data dives. So then I show all the data that we've collected. So our walkthroughs for the month, how many people are attending our staff events, any type of data there is, any surveys I send out, we share the survey data back because, as I said earlier, you don't want to ask questions and you don't want to give surveys and then not give people the answers or the data. Then we move into announcements and questions. I list all the announcements or things they need to know for the upcoming month. Now, mind you, I have a weekly newsletter on Sundays that go out, but repetition is good, especially for educators, because as you know, there's a lot going on in your life. So repetition is good, and we share those things. I mix some jokes in there, here and there. And then at the end, we do a temperature check. So a big QR code comes up. The staff scans it. And like I said, we ask about 3 questions, and the final one being, hey, where are you right now? And, if somebody needs support, we go to see immediately. Those are our staff meetings. They usually last about 25 minutes. I give them an opportunity to ask questions. But how many of you think, how many questions you think I get during those staff meetings? If I'm meeting with people for 15 minutes, we got 1,700 walkthroughs through a quarter and a half. And I do a all staff meeting every month. How many questions do you think I get? I get none. And that's a good thing, because to me, I get no questions. That means communication, I think, is pretty good.
Yeah, I like the what is it that you do at the end of their staff meetings? Oh, the temperature check.
Yeah, we call them temperature checks. Yeah.
So
Now, I will say, after announcements and questions, I try to pump the staff up. So I was talking yesterday about moments, and I told that story about a staff member, and then I told them we're the ones that make moments happen, and I talked about the interview chair. So, and then we do the temperature check.
Yeah, the temperature check, real quick, is just a form that he sends out and with a couple of questions, and then he and his admin look at it to see if somebody really needs help, and then they reach out to them. But we are almost finished, and this has been a wonderful conversation. I hope that I put in the chat, you can follow Bobby on Twitter. It's at Bobby Dodd, at Bobby __ Dodd. You could follow him to see what's happening there. Amanda, did you have any follow-ups for the session?
Yes, I'll just be posting a survey for this session, just for all of the participants to give feedback on this particular session. And that is it for me.
All right.